Now in today's video, we're going to be giving you guys 10 different MIDI tips that every Cubasis user should probably know, right after this. Hello and welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am your host, Vortex from MobileMusicPro.com, your home for mobile music production. And if you are new to the channel, what we do here is release weekly videos teaching people how to produce music on their iOS device. Now this video isn't exactly a video on how to make your MIDI sound better. In fact, we do have a bunch of those videos, such as how to make your MIDI sound more real, and a bunch of other MIDI videos as well, so definitely make sure you check those out. But in this video, I just wanted to throw out a few different tips out there that some beginner users, and maybe even some intermediate users, may not be aware of. I know that these tips have certainly helped my workflow, and I hope they help yours as well. Plus, make sure you stick around to the end of the video to hear about our brand new sample pack contest with over $500 in prizes up for grabs. Alright, and now with that intro aside, let's get into these 10 MIDI tips that every Cubasis user should know. Alright, and the very first MIDI tip that we'll be taking a look at today is going to be the MIDI Panic button. Now sometimes when you do have an AUV3 app open inside of your DAW like Cubasis here, and you're playing a bunch of notes at once or messing around with some of the MIDI clips, sometimes the app can get confused and it will hang on a note. And basically it's just the equivalent of somebody just holding down the note constantly. And you're wondering like, what's going on? Why is it constantly holding on to the note? And so if you don't know about this MIDI Panic button, you might just freak out and close the app. But you don't actually have to do that. In fact, all you have to do is go to your track that you currently have selected, and then go to the routing, and then tap on the MIDI Panic button right here. Tapping on that button will cease all MIDI activity for that track. Before I knew about this button, I myself panicked a little bit a couple times, and I ended up just closing the app, when all you have to do is just tap that button. Alright, and the second MIDI tip we'll be talking about today is going to be MIDI Stretch. And actually this is a relatively new feature inside of Cubasis 3. Before we just had audio stretch, but now we actually have full MIDI stretch, and let's show you what we mean by that. So we have this little melody and chord progression that I just played into the track here, and then beneath that a quick little drum loop that I played in here as well. So let's listen to what this sounds like first, and then we'll activate the MIDI Stretch feature right here. So let's hit play. Alright, perfect. Quite a bit of reverb on there, but that's okay for now. So what we're going to do is tap on our MIDI region here, our MIDI event, and then we're going to tap on the stretch button. And what this is going to do is allow you to increase or decrease the size of your MIDI event. And what that effectively does is either increases the speed or decreases the speed of your MIDI, effectively giving you a bit of a BPM change without actually changing the project's BPM. So let's hear what that sounds like now. Let's go ahead and stretch this to half the size. Only 4 bars here instead of 8. We'll tap on stretch to complete that. Let's go to the beginning of the track and hit play. Alright, so as you can hear, that MIDI is being played much faster. Now let's do the opposite. Let's stretch this out to 16 bars and hear what that sounds like. So first we'll make the whole screen a little bit smaller here. There we go. Now we can see the full 16 bars. So let's tap on our MIDI event, tap the stretch button, and then we're going to stretch this all the way out to a full 16 bars. All right, let's tap on the stretch to apply, and we'll extend out our loop here all the way to 16. And let's just mute the drums for now. And let's hit play. Alright, so as you can hear, that is being played much slower. And of course, this will work for any MIDI event, whether it's going to be for an instrument or for drums. And the next tip that we think every Cubasis user should know is going to be chord pads. And you'll find those in the piano page, which we can bring up by tapping on the keys button in the top left-hand corner of the app. Now here we have a couple different choices on how we can actually enter chords, but first we're going to try out those chord pads. So we're going to tap on keys and pads here, and that is going to bring up our chord pads. And here we can begin entering chords by simply tapping on these pads. And depending on where you tap them, you'll be able to adjust the velocity. So if you want it to be a little bit quieter, you want to tap around the edges here. But the closer you come to the center, the louder it will be. And you can of course edit these pads at any time by tapping on the edit button here. And you'll be able to select what kind of chord you'd like, either single or major, minor, and so forth. So first, all you have to do is choose a key over here on the left-hand side, and then choose what octave you'd like that to be, if you'd like it to be some kind of inversion, or if you'd like it to be major, minor, diminished, and so on. Now there's a second way to enter chords as well, so to do that, we will toggle the keys and pads button, once again, to bring up our piano. Now here, we'll tap on the chords button, and now we can have the option to tap and edit up to 12 chords on the screen at once. And again, to activate these, all you have to do is tap on them. Now, if you'd like to edit these, it's just as simple as editing those pads. So to do that, we'll tap on our edit button over here. And you can see we are editing the first chord here, but we can choose the second one if we'd like to edit that one. But let's edit the first one for now. And let's just make this a G. So we'll select on G. And then we'll change this to D. And there you have it. We have a G chord. Now that's kind of low, so maybe we'll bring that up a bit. And it's just that simple. Of course, there are a ton of AUV3 MIDI apps that can help you create chords as well, and we've done some videos on those. And towards the end of the video, we're going to bring back a couple of those again for this video to show you. But even without using any other third-party AUV3 apps, Cubasis 3 makes it pretty simple to enter chords into your MIDI editor. And the next MIDI tip that we'll be talking about is going to be Quantize Ends. Now, what does that mean? Well, we do have a loop pulled up here, and this particular MIDI loop is coming from our brand new completely free Essentials House sample pack. And if we double click it, we can see that these are basically just chord stabs here. So let's hear what this sounds like real quick. All right, very cool. Now, what if you want to actually turn these stabs into full-on chords? And you do that for a variety of different reasons. Maybe to add a pad in the background or add chords from a different piano. Well, Quantize Ends is the perfect way to do that, because the alternative would take a long time. The alternative, of course, would be deleting the second notes of all of these stabs and then dragging out that note to be a quarter note long. And again, that would take a long time. So let's go ahead and close this and use our Quantize section. So we're going to tap on the Quantize options here, and you can choose whatever you'd like, half note or quarter note. But in this case, we're going to do a quarter note, because as you can see here, these chord stabs are about a quarter note long. So let's close out of this, make sure we have a quarter note selected, and then we're going to select the ends. This will ensure that the notes will be quantized to whatever length that you select over here, which again in our case is quarter notes. So let's go ahead and tap our Quantize button now and watch these stabs stretch out into full quarter notes. All right, perfect. So we'll see that one more time. We'll undo. Here we just start out with the stabs, and we'll quantize these to quarter note long chords. All right, perfect. And let's hear what that sounds like. All right, super simple. And of course, you can quantize this to whatever length that you'd like, depending on whatever section and whatever song you're working on. But nevertheless, another super handy tip that should improve your workflow. And the very next MIDI tip that we'll be talking about is the Follow Playhead button. So let's show you where that is and what that does. Now, let's say you're working with a MIDI event here. We'll double tap on that. And let's say you're working all the way to the end here, maybe around bar 6, 7, or 8. Now, if you don't have this enabled, when you hit play and this reaches the end of the event, it'll then force your MIDI view here to go all the way to the beginning as well. Now, the actual Follow Playhead button is located in the top left-hand corner here, right above all of your tracks, next to the global, mute, and solo buttons. Now, we're going to turn this on to show you what that looks like. Now, once I hit play, this should wrap us all the way around to the beginning again. So let's hit play. All right, and as you can see, that definitely brought us all the way back to the first bar. Now that, of course, can be extremely frustrating if you're trying to edit notes in like bar 6, 7, or 8. So if you don't want that to happen, all you have to do is disable the Follow Playhead button by tapping on it. And now you can see that it is grayed out and no longer bright. Now let's scroll all the way to bar 6, 7, or 8 here towards the end. And when we hit play, this should no longer wrap us around to the beginning. So let's hit play. All right, perfect. As you can see, that left the viewport here right where we left it. And now you can continue to edit these notes without being interrupted by the playhead sending you back to the beginning. All right, now our next MIDI tip is going to be extremely simple, but you'd be surprised on how many people don't actually know about it. And in fact, I find myself not using it sometimes, and instead doing it the hard way. And what we're talking about is double tapping to select all your notes. And that is about as self-explanatory as you'd imagine. So if we open up our MIDI editor here, you can see that if we do want to select all of these notes, we first have to zoom completely out so that our selector can reach all the notes. But there is a quicker way. All you have to actually do is just double tap. And that will automatically select all of your notes for you right away. And again, sometimes I find myself doing this as well. Sometimes I find myself just zooming out and then just manually selecting all the notes at once, which of course, as you can see, is a little bit more tedious. And look, I didn't even get all the notes I wanted. So yeah, having that feature where you can just double tap and select everything at once in an instant is certainly a very useful feature. All right, and the next MIDI tip that we're going to be talking about that every Cubasis user should know is the ability to edit your velocity. Now, the velocity means how hard the notes are actually struck. And again, this applies whether it's going to be drums or a regular instrument. So let's show you what we mean. Now we have a MIDI event here from earlier in the video. We're going to double tap on that. Now again, this was a MIDI event that I actually played in here. So you are going to see a variety of different velocities here on these notes. Now if we zoom in here a little bit, Cubasis makes it pretty simple to see the velocity based on the color. You can see here that the darker notes have more velocity, whereas the lighter notes have less velocity. And the actual velocity here is displayed at the bottom of the MIDI page. You can see that the section is called velocity here at the bottom left. Now to expand this, all we have to do is tap on it. And now we can see that velocity in much more detail. You can see that pretty much every single note here has a different velocity than the note that came before it. This is going to result in a much more human sounding, much more realistic sounding piano. So it does become extremely important to understand velocity and how to edit it inside of your DAW. Alright, and the next MIDI tip that we want to share with you is to make sure that you're aware of control changes. Now you're probably familiar with the mod wheel and the pitch bend on a keyboard. These different wheels will create what we call control changes or CC changes. And it's important to be aware of where those are inside of Cubasis. So we have a MIDI loop that we just created, and this is going to be a guitar coming from GeoShred. And what I want to do is use the mod wheel to add some vibrato on here. So first, let's just hear what it sounds like by itself. All right, very cool. But now I want to add some of those modulation changes here with some of those CC messages. So the first thing I'm going to do is record those changes and then show you how to access those. Now, since I'll be recording over this, this will create a new MIDI event, but that's okay because we can always copy those changes back to our original MIDI event if we want. So let's go ahead and try this out and hit play. All right, so let's double click on this new MIDI event. And there right away are our control changes that you can see. So if we tap on the regular MIDI, you see there's nothing here. But if we go to our control changes here in the bottom left-hand corner, this is the same place where our velocity is located as well. But we're focused on is the CC1 modulation here, which is from our mod wheel. And you can see that we recorded some of these changes. Now this is actually not subtle enough for me. I wanted these to be a little bit more subtle. So I'm just going to go ahead and erase this. We're going to go to our original MIDI event here, and we're going to manually draw some of these in. So we'll find our CC1 modulation here. Tap our draw button, and then here I just want to have some ever so slightly changes here, just ever so slightly kind of moving in and out to create some movement. All right, because less is definitely more for this particular preset in GeoShred. I just don't want that vibrato to become too overwhelming. So now let's hear what this sounds like. All right, great. It definitely sounds a little bit more varied than just with these straight notes being played by themselves. All right, and the next MIDI tip that I want to talk about is going to be using MIDI Scales. Now there's actually some apps that can help you do this automatically, which we'll talk about in the next section. But for now, I want to show you how to do this with just MIDI files. Now we have a bunch of different MIDI packs in a variety of different genres here at MobileMusicPro, but we do have two packs in particular that are much more utilitarian focused and are there to help folks that haven't quite mastered music theory yet. We also have a different MIDI pack for chord progressions, but we're not going to be talking about that one today. Now, what do we mean when we say MIDI scales? Well, that simply means adding notes within a specific scale that you're using inside of a MIDI editor. And again, without music theory, it might be a little bit difficult to do this. So let's bring up our pack now. Let's go to our media browser, go to our MIDI packs here, and we're going to choose Scales and Chords, which is MIDI pack 01. And we can pick any kind of scale here that we want. Let's just do something simple here, like melodic minor, for example. And here you can choose any key that you'd like. Let's just make it simple and choose the C key here. Now, in fact, let's make it a little bit different. Let's make it a E key. So we're an E melodic minor here. This is what this scale is. So let's drag this file on up. We'll put this at the beginning here. And then we'll open up this MIDI file. Just drag this up so you can see. We'll select all these by double tapping. Drag this back here. And now what we effectively have is a grid showing us exactly what notes we can use inside of this scale. meaning any note that we place here where the purple line is will automatically sound perfect. And in fact, we can build full chords if we'd like as well. So first, let's just try to build a chord. Let's go B, and then G, and then E. You can see that each one of these does have a corresponding note in this particular scale. So let's see what this sounds like. All right, perfect. So that's a great chord. And we can even extend this chord if we'd like. Making it even richer. But for now, let's just put some notes in here to make a melody. Let's go to eighth notes here, and let's see what we can find. All right, so we've placed some random notes here, all corresponding with the notes here in the scale, and these should all work with each other. So let's hit play. All right, perfect. So again, these MIDI files all highlight scales, and placing any notes in these scales will give you correct sounding chords and notes for your melodies. All right, and now we are finally on the very last and final MIDI tip of the day, but this is definitely my favorite, and that is going to be using AUV3 MIDI plugins. Now there are a ton of these different apps, and we're just going to show you a couple here today. But again, we do have videos on other AUV3 MIDI apps. All you have to do is search for MIDI on our channel. But let's dive in with our very first one, which is going to be the Rosetta suite. And within that suite, we're going to try out Rosetta Scaler. Now, what is Rosetta Scaler? Well, it's an app that allows you to stay in scale, meaning that any note that you press is going to be correct, or in other words, you cannot press a wrong note. So let's try that out. So here we have our piano track again, and then under MIDI effects here, we're going to tap to add a new effect. We're going to scroll down to where it says Scaler here from Rosetta. There it is, Rosetta Scaler. And let's just pick a random scale here. Actually, let's go ahead and choose minor natural. Now we shouldn't be able to play a wrong note. Alright, as you can hear, they're definitely super handy to keep you in scale. But the Rosetta suite isn't quite done yet. The next tool I want to show you in there is going to be the arpeggiator. So let's take a look at that now. So what we have here is a chord progression, which is that same chord progression that I entered in here earlier, except this time instead of having a melody on top, it's just the plain chords. So we can hear what that sounds like real quick. All right, perfect. Now, what we're going to do is add that arpeggiator app. So let's go to our MIDI effects again, tap to add effect. We'll scroll down to where it says Rosetta Arpeggio. Now you can vary up the settings here as much as you'd like. Personally, I like to either use 2 or 4 on the clock divider, so we're going to use 2 here. And now it should arpeggiate all of these chords for us. Let's hit play. All right, perfect. And of course, you can choose between up, down, random, and so forth. But generally, I like to go up or down. So a super simple but super effective app. All right, now again, there are a ton of these different MIDI apps, but we are going to feature just one last one in this video. And that is going to be Strummer by 4Pockets. And that app does just pretty much what you'd expect, and that is, of course, strum the MIDI. Now, there is a bunch of different great sequences built in, and we're going to use some of those. So first, of course, you'll need a guitar app, and for that, we're going to be using GeoShred here. That is going to be using the electric guitar preset. So now what I want to do is add some strumming for this guitar. So we're going to go back to our MIDI effects and tap to add effect. And let's scroll down to where it says 4Pocket Strummer. There it is, Strummer Effects. We'll tap on that. We can choose from a bunch of different variations like we said. But there's a couple things you want to set first. First, we want to tap on Host Sync and then choose a variation. Let's just go with the default variation here. Nice and simple. And now we can use these strum keys here. But what I want to focus on is the arpeggio button right here. But that will only work when you're playing. So what we're going to do is hit play, and we're going to hold down this button. All right, there we go. And of course, there are a bunch of other different variations, and you can always load your very own custom variation in there if you'd like. All right, and now it's time again for our final thoughts. And if you are still rocking with us, then we just can't thank you enough for being here, especially those folks that are here every single Wednesday and Friday to watch our live streams and our live premieres. Now we really hope that these MIDI tips do help your workflow, but if you think we missed anything, definitely make sure to leave that in the comments below. Now of course most of these tips were pretty simple, but you'd be surprised at some of the little things that people miss, myself included. It really does feel good to put another Cubasis tutorial on the channel because we've been focusing on a couple other things like quick tips and reviews, but we will for sure always have a ton more Cubasis tutorial videos coming. And speaking of Cubasis, if you do use that as your main DAW, then you're going to love our brand new Essentials sample pack, because it does come with 20 different microlog presets and a Cubasis 3 template. Make sure to use this pack to create a brand new original production and enter it into our brand new sample pack contest with over $500 in prizes up for grabs. And we are super glad to have Dean from Electrona Sounds and Nutrix the Synth Guy be judges for this contest. If you do want to enter, you'll find all the details that you need on our website at MobileMusicPro.com/contest. And of course, we're always coming out with new contests, new sample packs, and new videos, so if you do want to keep up with everything that we are doing here at the channel, definitely make sure to sign up for our completely free newsletter at MobileMusicPro.com/newsletter. And so, until next time everybody, keep talking music, and we'll see you later. Hey everybody, Vortex here, and if you're not aware yet, we now have over 100 fully edited mobile music tutorial videos. And we make music every single Wednesday live on our channel right inside of Cubasis on our iPad. Plus, we also have a bunch of free sample packs, guides, and more at our website at MobileMusicPro.com/free. And so if you are into that sort of thing, producing music on your iPhone or iPad, then definitely make sure to subscribe and check out the rest of the videos on the channel that we know you'll love.